is Agriculture Today. I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network. Coming up on this Tuesday's programming, we have K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. He covers more in depth the recent heat burst experienced across parts of Kansas, as well as the Animal Comfort Index tool made readily available through the Kansas Mesonet. Also ahead, Justin Waggoner, K-State beef cattle extension specialist, discusses the labor shortage crisis covered in his latest Management Minute, which can be found on the KSU Animal Science Beef Tips newsletter. Also ahead on this week's Milk Lines, Mike Brouk, K-State's dairy extension specialist, talks about the K-State dairy's recent experience losing power due to severe weather and the importance of having readily available power sources on the dairy farm. All that and more ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We're back now with our meteorologist here at K-State, Chip Redmond, and we're going to be talking about a little bit more of that heat that we've been experiencing, but some specific tools that producers can utilize as well. So, Chip, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a warm time of the year, and so we're worried about the heat.
Absolutely. Especially, we saw record temps the 10th through the 14th of this month, so a few weekends ago.
Yeah, we had record temperatures in a few locations in the afternoon, but those were pretty low-hanging fruit records, we call them. They were a little bit lower those days that we set them than the surrounding areas. We didn't have overly hot temperatures during the day, but it's really what happened overnight. That's the big concern. We broke a lot of records at night, both daily records, and we even broke one all-time daily low record at Dodge City with an 83-degree reading. That's really warm at night. And so we had a warmer air mass in place, but we also had some moisture that occurred before that. And so when we began transitioning from a really humid air mass to a warmer, drier air mass, we had a day or two of overlap there where we had the heat and the humidity before the humidity really dried out. And so that kind of fell in that weekend. And so not only was it warmer than normal during that 10th through the 14th, but we also saw increased humidity for the first few days of that period that really made it feel a lot hotter than what it was.
Mm-hmm. And not only for us as, human beings, but also for our animals, obviously. We've unfortunately seen the, consequences of that. Yeah,
a lot of heat stress as a result, and our bodies respond differently to heat. They obviously cattle respond differently than what humans do. However, we just weren't adjusted to the heat at that point. We had a heat wave, as you could call it, in mid-May, but it had been cooler ever since then. And we had cooler temperatures, actually slightly below average temperatures. And so this really warm air mass really kind of slammed the door on us, and people just weren't quite adapted, nor the animals adapted to it.
Sure, and we've heard claims of this event being called a heat burst, and it's been used kind of incorrectly by some. So can you explain what a heat burst really is?
Yeah, so some of those places that set overnight really warm temperatures, they had heat bursts occur overnight. And so heat bursts they typically occur at night, and they are when a thunderstorm collapses or falls apart. It basically acts like a downburst or a microburst of sorts, where that cool air, dense air, is descending, and it's descending into a warm air mass, and so it dries it out, and it forces that air to warm more. And so basically, as it falls, it warms until it reaches the ground. All the precipitation that was in it dissipates, evaporates, and then we have really warm, dry air that reaches the surface, and that's a heat burst. And they're really localized. We see them kind of like a downburst in a thunderstorm. They only impact tens to maybe 20s of miles. Very rarely do we see them 50 miles or more. And they occur when the thunderstorm dies, and then they dissipate. Eventually the air kind of moderates. And they also bring the really dry air as well. So we'll see temperatures spike up, and we'll see the humidity drop when we have them. And then gradually they trend back to where it was before.
Sure, so exactly what we saw that past weekend for sure then.
Yeah, we had a lot of really localized heat bursts. Some were in southwest Kansas, some were in northwest Kansas. We even had one here in Manhattan right before daybreak. I forget which day it was, but the temperature spiked up to 85 degrees right before sunrise, and it was 70-something. We had heat bursts push temperatures like around Ashland, Kansas, in Clark County. They went from about 90 degrees at night, which is already really warm, to over 100 degrees at 11 p.m. And then we actually had a second heat burst in that same location later that night at 4 a.m. It only bumped temperature up to 95, but you can see how that helped keep those low temperatures higher than you'd expect. And so we got really lucky that the heat overnight was impactful, but it came with drier humidity. And as a result, there's actually less stress that comes with a dry air mass. And then we got lucky, too, because sometimes those can be associated with really strong winds. We did have like some small debris damage, like sticks down and stuff like that as a result, but nothing significant. Where in like Oklahoma before, they've had like big damaging ones, 60, 70, 80 mile an hour associated with these heat bursts. So thankfully didn't occur in this case.
Sure, and these aren't things that travel like fronts. You mentioned that these are static kind of events that happen, but we just had multiple of them across the state happening almost simultaneously.
Correct. We had a really dry air mass moving in at the surface that really helped dissipate these thunderstorms. And so we had a lot of them just kind of as like a downpour, kind of same kind of premise. And so they were scattered and occurred throughout the night in various locations, but never moved from one area to another. So
now that we've kind of covered the events that we've seen here lately, we're not going to see that kind of end here anytime soon, are we, heat-wise?
No, we're going to keep the heat through this week into Saturday. We have seen a drier air mass move in, though. We've had afternoon humidities in the 15% range or lower in western Kansas, where I know a lot of concern was before, with higher humidity. And so a much drier air mass, and we still have heat indices, especially the eastern part of the state where there's more moisture, but we're not approaching that threshold as much, and we're actually, the feels like temperature is actually cooler than what we had that last period. And now we will introduce some moisture, some monsoon moisture that's going to push in later this week. That might bump those heat indices up a little bit more, but also going to bring cloud cover with it and hopefully some isolated areas of rainfall.
And I know listeners tuning in have probably already heard us mention this tool before, but we have the Mesonet here at K-State, which is a great resource for producers or even just, anyone else tuning in that might want more weather information. And one of those tools on the Mesonet is the Animal Comfort Index that you guys have included.
Yeah, just a reminder, though, the Mesonet is a network of weather stations that we have across the state. About 80 weather stations now that report data as often as every 5 minutes. And you can find that data on our webpage. That's mesonet.ksu.edu, mesonet.ksu.edu. And so you can look at that data real time, as well as go back and pull hourly and daily data to look at what happened previously. So you can pull up, southwest Kansas, the 10th to the 14th to see what the daily temperatures were, max and min, and the average humidity, and you can see when the high humidity overlapped with the warmer temperatures. And you can also pull hourly and see just how long duration it was. Now, we do take that data and we put it into tools, and the Animal Comfort is one tool that we have that collects current and then historical data, only the last 7 days, unfortunately, right now. But the current and historical data of the current conditions, or the current feels like for cattle. So it breaks it down into categories. So I can't remember specific categories right now, but extremes the most, where anything over 105 feels like temperature. That combines humidity, solar radiation, wind, and temperature, because all those impact what the animals can feel. So higher winds make the animal feel more comfortable. And then, but anything over like 105, you'll start looking at losses just because of the heat.
And if producers are looking for even more information, I understand that you guys have now included the USDA's Animal Comfort forecast as well.
Yeah, we've went ahead and put a link. If you go to the Animal Comfort page and look at the current conditions, and you can look at it statewide or click on a station and pull up your current one. There's also a link at the top of the page that will direct you to our resources tab, and there we've added the USDA's I believe it's 5, it might be 6-day forecast for animal comfort, and that's at the regional scale, not necessarily at that particular location, but you can look at the map of the state and see what the forecasted worst case scenario is. So that's just an additional resource people have. We do not do forecasts right now on the Kansas Mesonet. We do have a little bit where we take in the National Weather Service data and at least display it. Like if you looked at it on the desktop, you can see it on the main page, but we don't incorporate that tools just because it takes time and effort, and this wasn't the top priority for us right now.
But the USDA tool is something that producers can utilize right now, absolutely, right? Yes.
I mean, it shows the next 6 to 7 days and what the worst case scenario is of the maximum heat index or animal comfort index is of that day. So that helps people predict when there will be maybe an extreme day. Like we had still 1 or 2 last week, but hopefully the animals are acclimated now. I noticed that I'm not sweating as much when I go out and work out just because my body is acclimated to the heat.
Gives producers at least a few days heads up to make, appropriate changes that might be necessary. Chip, anything else you'd like to mention before we wrap up here?
Yeah, no, just you can access that data and any of our data at mesonet.ksu.edu. And to find that animal comfort page, if you go to the main page, there's 3 bars stacked on the top left. You click that, you go to agriculture and then animal comfort. Want to see the last 7 days, you can scroll down a little bit, find chart, and you can look at them, plot on the chart. And it's not just for heat, too. The animal comfort covers the whole spectrum. So when we have cold, I don't expect any cold anytime soon, but when we have the colder temperatures come fall and winter, that gives producers the ability to look at, what's the current stress level on the cold side as well.
That was K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond on the Animal Comfort Index tool, which is made available on the Kansas Mesonet. We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today. You're back now with Agriculture Today from the K-State Radio Network. We have with us now K-State Extension beef cattle specialist Justin Waggoner to discuss his latest Management Minute piece that he writes for the KSU Animal Science newsletter. He's joining us for this discussion from Garden City, so thank you for taking the time to join us, Justin.
No, thanks for the opportunity, Samantha.
Absolutely. So we are going to be covering an important topic today. Maybe not one that immediately comes to mind when we think agriculture, but an important one nonetheless. And that topic is the ongoing labor shortage crisis that we are seeing really across all industries in the U.S.
That's correct, Samantha. And, some of the drive behind, the beef cattle specialist wanting to explore this topic a little bit more was, as I visit with feed yard managers, labor shortages is very much a concern in our industry. We've certainly, everyone you talk to, they're short of employees. Even here at K-State, within experiment stations off campus, we have several open positions, and we've actually been struggling to get even applicants to apply for those positions. And so I got interested in this topic. Well, what's behind this labor shortage, and what should we try to do about it? I mean, how do we address this issue? This is obviously something that everybody, regardless of, whether you're in the food service industry or you're in agriculture or even a university, is being impacted by.
Absolutely, and maybe even more so in unique cases like our industry, where the labor is a little bit more intense and a little bit more tasking on individuals. So I'm sure we'll talk about that here a little bit more in a moment. But you wrote an article about this specifically, and there were some significant numbers in that article that you mentioned.
Yeah, so as I researched the topic a little bit more, and I found a report from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and so there's a lot of great resources on workforce development and this issue as well at the uschamber.com website. And one of the numbers that stuck out to me was, they really talked about the pandemic, and that it was really one of the disruptors in the U.S. workforce, and that in 2021, that 47 million workers quit their jobs in 21, and so that is a huge number. And so I was really surprised by that number, and That's 47 million people deciding that they want to do something else, or maybe they're exiting the workforce. There's a lot of potential reasons behind that. But either way, that is a huge number of people leaving the workforce or changing jobs in the workforce.
Absolutely. And one of those changes, I'm sure, was people deciding, hey, I think I'm going to just go ahead and retire now, then maybe work a few more years. So I know that that's a thing that you believe is a major cause of why we see such a shortage.
Yeah, I think one of the things we always have to remember, and we often don't think about, is that there's a number of different generations in the workplace. I mean, if you think about the U.S. workforce right now, we still have people that are essentially baby boomers in the workforce that were born in the 40s, post-World War II, all the way to, Gen X and Z, et cetera, that are, on the other end of the spectrum just entering the workforce. And so we've got this workforce that spans several generations. And so, one of those contributing factors that we know is a part of that exit is, some folks just deciding that they want to retire, most likely those in that baby boomer maybe generation or those shortly thereafter, just deciding to retire. There's some other reasons as well, right? We know that childcare is also a major issue. You think about, some of the major disruptions from the pandemic was, when school is closed or, daycare providers are closed due to concerns over COVID, that really forces a working family to make some decisions. And so there's also a fairly large number of women who exited the workforce and who are now staying home due to childcare reasons. And so those are just some of the things that, are potentially behind this reduction in the labor force that's available out there.
When we think about agriculture, when we think the generational changes, that's something that I think is really interesting, especially because when we hear these numbers that most people today are on average 3 generations removed from the farm. So, these younger adults that are getting into the workforce, that are starting to work now, they might not be searching for opportunities in ag like we might have seen from those older generations.
Sure, there certainly is. And I think in agriculture, we have always maybe been challenged a little bit to get people who did not necessarily come from an ag background to get interested in agriculture and the careers that are out there. And so, I think that's an important for agriculture especially, is to try to target young people and let them know that those opportunities are out there. Maybe that's, one of the most exciting workforce development programs, right, is, finding new people that want to be involved in agriculture. And I think one of the things that, and we could maybe look at this lots of different ways, but, agriculture is really unique in terms of that work-life balance. I mean, when I think about, what I did as a young person, getting to go along with my mom or dad on the tractor and doing some of those things at home, I mean, I think that's actually attractive to some people, and so that they would have those opportunities. So, maybe there's some opportunities there in agriculture that we need to talk a little bit more about, and just that different pace of lifestyle that might be attractive to some more people that are out there in terms of, hey, yes, the hours can be long, and sometimes it's not the best work environment due to those environmental and weather conditions that are out there, but hey, there's some other really great things that come along with it as well.
That's another thing that you believe might incentivize for these potential future employees to help lessen the effects of this labor shortage crisis is there needs to be incentives other than, pay and hours kind of thing. There needs to be some added benefits there as well.
Yeah, we've known for a number of years in terms of workforce development that, there's more to finding and retaining good people than just the salary that you offer them, that, those other benefits, and those can come in lots of different forms. I mean, we talked about, if childcare is a big issue, and I think that's where a lot of our industries are going, is they know it's a major issue, so maybe they're providing some incentives. Maybe there's some additional salary dollars or dollars that might go towards providing for employees' childcare program. Another one is continuing education programs. Is there the opportunity, if this person takes this position, maybe to further their education, take some additional courses? That's one of the things here, at Kansas State University, when we have conversations with new potential hires, that's one of the things that I think is a great benefit to us is, hey, you're right here. We do have the ability to, maybe help you along in terms of some tuition credits or some of those things like that. So those are, things outside of the salary. And I would just encourage employers, even in agriculture, to get fairly creative. I mean, if we know child care is an issue, maybe we can change our scheduling, just doing what we can to accommodate those and be aware of those issues that if that is a concern, is there something we can do about it if it fits within the context of the business as well? And, in some cases it does, in other cases it may not. But I think we certainly are at a point where we have to get a bit more creative, that it's more than just an hourly wage, and we have to certainly be sensitive to some of those issues that are out there.
Sure, something for employers looking for new employees to definitely keep in mind. Justin, as far as the industry goes, where is this labor shortage crisis really affecting us most in agriculture?
Well, that's a really good question. As you look into the demographics and the numbers out there, agriculture shows up, but it's actually not one of the industries that's been impacted the largest. Actually, is that the leisure and hospitality sector has been probably the most impacted, which if you think about it, we would expect that, right? And the financial sector has been the least, and agriculture is somewhere in the middle. And really the data doesn't get broken out that I've come across to break it down into, specific, aspects of agriculture, specific industries within agriculture. But we've certainly been impacted to some extent. It's really hard to say, if there's a particular farming sector or where that's been, And oftentimes we see people leave agriculture maybe for another opportunity, but then they'll come back. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. So I unfortunately don't have a great answer to that question as to what our impacts are going to be there. I want to say that we are seeing it across the board in all of the industries, and that's kind of unique. Typically, it's been in one particular industry or area where we saw people maybe picking up or making a different employment choice, and here it just seems like all of them are certainly being impacted.
A unique spot that the industry is in for sure, Justin. If listeners are tuning in and they're thinking they want to learn more about this subject or more about related subjects, what are some resources that listeners can check out?
So we really don't have any more additional resources on this topic per se. It is we do put out the Management Minute in our ASI newsletter, and it's really a topic where I try to take different issues like this one that are out there, and then really kind of see how they come across in ag, or how they might interact or fit in with our agricultural audience.
For more from Justin and his Management Minute, you can find that and more on the K-State website. It's enewsletters.kstate-edu/beef tips. That monthly segment can be found on the Beef Tips monthly newsletter from the Animal Science Department here at K-State. That will be linked in our show notes of today's episode, which can be found on our website, agtoday.net. That was Justin Waggoner, our Extension Beef Cattle Specialist here at K-State, located in Garden City, Kansas. Once we return from this short break ahead of us, we'll be back with Mike Brouk, our Dairy Extension Specialist here at K-State. That and more ahead on Agriculture Today. To round out today's programming with our Milk Line segment for the week, we have with us Mike Brouk, K-State Dairy Extension Specialist.
Today I'd like to visit with our Kansas dairy farmers concerning, are you prepared for the summer heat and the things that go with that? When we think about summer heat, we also need to think about thunderstorms and power outages and how we're going to deal with that. So really what I want to talk about today is, are we prepared for those emergencies that come along during the summertime associated with power outages? So most of you are very well covered on the milking side. You probably have a backup generator that will run your milking equipment and the milk cooling equipment. But here's the catch. A lot of times those are not a single powered unit. A lot of times we depend on a tractor to run those. So is that tractor really ready to go? Has it been serviced recently? And do you have it available at all times on your dairy? Not maybe off at another farm or some other place that'll take you a while to get it to the dairy. Here's the situation. Just a few days ago, we lost power at the K-State dairy during milking. So how quickly can you get up and running again? For us, it's a pretty simple process. Just simply hook up the tractor and we're ready to go. But the tractor has to be there, serviced and ready to go in order to do that. So we were back up and running in about 30 minutes, which I think ideally on a dairy we should be able to do that. If you have some sort of stationary generator, it probably already has a power source there, so getting it up and running is only a matter of a few minutes. But be prepared. So here's some other things to think about. Number one, you have to feed the cows as well as milk them. So is your feeding system ready to go if you have a prolonged outage? Be careful about your bin systems. Many of you use bins to store some of your grain mixes and other things. So those need power in order to unload. Do you have a stationary generator that you can put on those systems? Keeping in mind that sometimes, particularly with shortages of electrical equipment, we may be out for a few days. So being able to feed and milk your animals with backup generators over time is really important. Now, there's some other things you need to think about as well. We usually use a lot of cooling fans and other things to keep our cows cool in our barns. Do you have any backup electrical system for that? I know it's expensive, and we don't need it very often. But if you're in some sort of tunnel-ventilated or cross-ventilated barn, it's important that you have a system that will cover that so that you can get ventilation into those barns if we do have a power outage. And again, you need to be prepared for an event that could last a few days. Now, a couple other things to think about as we think about heat and cooling milk. You need to make sure that your condenser system is fully cleaned on the milk cooling system. A lot of times that's skipped in our maintenance programs. As a result of that, we do not cool milk as efficiently. If we have to go on backup power, that may also interfere a little bit with the efficiencies of our cooling systems. Therefore, having very clean condensers is even more important for that. And along with that, make sure that the level of the Freon or other coolant has been checked in those systems so that we can efficiently cool, even if we might be a little bit short on generation power. This is Mike Brouk with K-State Research and Extension, encouraging our dairy farmers to be prepared for loss of power during the summertime heat.
That was Milk Lines for the week and our final segment for today's edition of Agriculture Today. We hope you'll tune back in tomorrow for an amazing edition with an ag law update from Kansas State University and Washburn University School of Law's Roger McOwen. He'll cover 2 cases recently brought before the Kansas Court of Appeals. To listen to the podcast version of Agriculture Today, be sure to visit agtoday.net or find us on any podcast app on your mobile device. You can find us by searching Agriculture Today, Kansas. There you'll find this and all past podcast programs. Be sure to tap the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating. And the latest new episodes of Agriculture Today will automatically arrive on your device every weekday. That's it for Agriculture Today. I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network.